Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Joining me on the show today are two of my really good friends, Mr. Martin Bailey and Mr. Craig Colvin. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, great.
Doing great.
Yeah, this is we were talking before I clicked the record button. This is kind of a light news week, but I'm going to do my best to make it salacious.
Salacious is good.
Salacious. I'm gonna act like, CNN or one of these news media outlets we have here and take something that's not that big a deal and blow it up.
Just like all the election stuff, right?
Just like all the election stuff, yeah. And it's funny you say that. As we record this, it is the night before Election Tuesday, Super Tuesday. So by the time this is listened to, we will know who the president of the United States is in theory. Right now, we don't know. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, Craig.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't feel. Yeah, I would rather. Yeah, we just not know.
I know, Martin. It's like, how you get those cool jitters the night before Christmas, and it's like something's coming. You don't know what it is, but it's exciting and all that. I feel like that, but it feels like maybe it's tonight. Like you got sentenced since the night before you have to report to jail or something.
Yeah, it's more dread. It's not excitement. It's dread. Yeah.
It is dread. Either way
Yeah.
it goes. It's like a double-edged sword. So anyway. Despite that cloud of political entropy that we're dealing with, we have some cool stories to talk about on the show. Before we do that, Martin, what's going on with you, man? What's happening in your world?
Oh, I've getting ready now I've actually had to plan a quick visit back to the UK to visit family. So I'm trying to get some. Excuse me. I'm trying to get some podcasts in the pipe, ready for just to feed out while I'm away.
Yeah.
Looking at a few new things. One exciting new thing that I can't even mention because of an NDA, but there's some good stuff coming down the pipe. It's one of those catch-up sort of times for me. It's between I finished Greenland and Iceland in September. And now I'm just sort of on the build-up to my winter tours, so it's that time when I'm getting lots of stuff done in the room here, my little apartment studio in Tokyo.
Yeah,
I've actually moved my room back around as well.
So did I. It's that time of year. I moved mine too.
Yeah. I mean, get stuck in. It's actually, I mean, it's good because I'm still teaching at the Arcanum, and I go off like submerge for months at a time as I do my traveling. Yeah. So it's good because I'm now able to get back in with the group and help those guys out a little bit more as well. So all good.
Good. I love that you're always busy. You're constantly, you're like Tarzan swinging from vine to vine.
Yeah, it's good
without
stuff.
The yell. Yeah. And Craig, what about you, man? I know you got a lot of stuff going on.
I've been super busy. I wish there were more hours in the day. I've been working on getting some workshops set up for the new year.
Nice.
So I have one with the Utah Adventures where we're going to take nude models, do fine art nudes in the desert. And I've
done that with you before in
Las Vegas. We were Valley of Fire outside
Valley
Las
of Fire.
Vegas.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah.
So
you know your stuff. You definitely know your stuff.
Anyway, going to be joining them for one of their tours in next June, and the Palo Alto Art League. I'm going to be teaching some lighting classes there on photographing the human form.
Cool.
And,
cool.
It's
awesome.
it's been busy.
Busy. Speaking of Palo Alto and photography, you heard the news, right?
Well, I did.
Keeble and Shuckett. Keeble and Shuckett is kind of a staple in Silicon Valley for photography. It's a brick and mortar photography store. Shut their doors. About a month or so ago, right?
Right after 70-something years.
Yep, 70-something years. They shut down. Couldn't make a go of it, and we've talked about it on This Week in Photo before. Just the brick and mortar stores and how they're faring and what's happening there. And I think a lot of it is due to the Amazon, right? I mean, people go into the stores and they fondle the gear and then they give it back and go order the thing on their phone sitting in the parking lot, right?
So cheaper and no tax.
Cheaper
in a lot
and no
of cases.
tax. Yeah. It's sad to see because those stores provide a valuable service because you go in and you kind of get to geek out and see the lighting gear on the show floor and all that stuff. It gets you excited to go into a camera store, and it's sad to feel like that dimension of things it might be going away. Martin, what about Yodobashi camera? Is Yodobashi still doing okay in Tokyo?
Yeah, they're doing great, but what they're doing though is Yodobashi is one of the better ones. They've still got a huge I think it's a 5 or 6 floor building in Shinjuku that's just for cameras. But around there, they've got they've got like the multimedia store, and they've got like even a watch store that just sells watches. And so they're gradually taking over all of West Shinjuku. Every time a shop empties, they just buy it or rent it or whatever they do.
Good.
But yeah, they're booming. There's other stores. There's Bic Camera, as in Bic the pen, the ball pen.
Yeah.
They have a number of stores, and you go in there, and it's still called Bic Camera, but their camera area is like a tiny square in the corner of a big department store now. But they're doing okay. And I think the thing is that maybe it's just a mentality thing, but if I go to Yodobashi and I want to buy something, I'll generally buy it there. What they do though is my favorite store here in Tokyo is Map Camera, just down the street from Yodobashi, because they're a little bit cheaper. But I buy from these places, especially camera lenses and bodies. I'll always buy from these places because I want somewhere that I can go straight back. If there's something wrong with the gear, they all honor if you bring it back in 2 weeks, if it's broken out of the box, then just bring it back and we'll exchange it for you straight away. And although you can do that with Amazon, the thing that I've found with Amazon, especially here in Japan, is they've tied up with so many different small resellers that you don't really know when. I always try to find the ones where it says it's sold and shipped by Amazon.co.jp. But sometimes even when you do that, it ends up coming from some obscure reseller, and it can get really difficult to send stuff back or get a refund. So I'm with camera bodies and lenses, I always just buy from Map Camera, and a lot of the other stuff I'll buy direct from Yodobashi. It just seems easier and safer to me in many ways.
But you think about it, and not everyone is in a major metropolitan area like that.
Exactly.
Some people don't. Some people just don't have a big camera store that they can that's convenient to them, that they can go buy stuff from and then have that easy return. So
I buy from Amazon here a lot. I've got some stuff here that I'm probably going to talk about during the pick of the week, and I bought all of that from Amazon. I have the guy coming with Amazon boxes probably at least once a week, so I use them a lot.
It's almost daily here.
Guilty.
I use them a lot. So it's not that I don't understand that, but I do think that there's it's probably. Even if there's a few, $10-20 difference in price or so, sometimes more, I'll often still just buy from a bricks and mortar store, just in part way, just to help them stay relevant and keep them in business.
Well, when you were talking about this 5 stories of camera store, whatever, it made me think of B&H in New York, right? And I buy a lot. Instead of buying from Amazon, I buy from B&H. So it's kind of helping the brick and mortar store stay around.
So Craig, you buy from B&H and ship, or do you, when you're in New York, you just go buy stuff?
Both. I would say at least half the camera gear I buy, I ship from B&H.
Okay.
So as opposed to Amazon, the prices are often comparable.
I don't know why. I don't think I've bought from B&H more than twice. Not because of any, sort of protest or anything. It's just I'm used to buying things from Amazon, and it feels easy to go in there and look for the Prime logo, and it's there. And I read through the comments, and if there's no glaring kind of craziness there, I click buy, and a couple days later, it's on my porch. It's just been
the nice thing about B&H, it does have things that I have trouble finding on Amazon, or that, like Martin said, is coming from one of these third parties, and it's going to be 2 weeks to ship. So going to B&H works well there.
Well, some of the TWiP listeners will probably comment and say that, well, B&H and their there are policies with regard to their workers and all that stuff. Remember, we covered that story earlier.
Right.
What was it, earlier this year or late last year? So there's that.
Well,
so if you have
the other
those
issue
sort
I
of
have
political
with B&H
leanings,
is I always need something the week they're closed.
yeah.
Yeah, there are so
For
many
some
Jewish
reason, your
holidays.
gear needs coincide with Passover.
Well, some Jewish holiday. There's lots of them.
Yeah,
Rosh Hashanah, right?
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows?
yeah.
But yes.
Oh well. Luckily there are lots of choices. So if for whatever reason you have an aversion to B&H, you can go to someplace else. And if you're lucky like Martin, you can still patronize the brick and mortar stores. I would encourage that, to patronize the guys that are keeping people employed and keeping sort of the hobby of photography alive beyond just the ether, because I think it's really important. That stuff needs to manifest some other way. I think if the brick and mortar stores continue to kind of atrophy or whatever, we need some kind of physical outlet where people can go and touch and feel and not necessarily buy stuff. I hope maybe there's a business model in there somewhere.
I reckon what needs to happen is the people the people that are making the products need to adjust their pricing. I know that it's difficult for them to say, okay, if you're here, we're going to charge you this much, and if you're a bricks and mortar store, we're going to charge you this much. But I think they need to do something to help the bricks and mortar stores stay up in business. Just sort of give them a higher commission, or figure out some way of making it worth their while staying in a bricks and mortar store.
But that's a chain link problem all the way up, because the manufacturers are going to say, well, who's going to cut, right? Or if they cut their prices, then they're going to have to cut employees, and then it's a trickle down. So who knows?
Well, a lot of the manufacturers are starting to address that with what they call brand programs. That it's basically they fix the price. You cannot sell below that, or you will no longer be a dealer. And they get around it being called price fixing because they call it brand identity, maintaining our brand, and you have to sign a contract to do that. But it's a struggle for them to get dealers to sign up for that, and
one of the other ways these manufacturers are sort of getting around the whole brick and mortar stuff attrition is they are doing these deals with the big box retailers like Best Buy, etc., where they actually put but they put employees in those stores. Like Panasonic will have a full-time salary Panasonic rep in the store. So will Nikon, Sony, Canon, etc. That then they have their own mechanics in there where they have their own quotas. The problem with that is those people appear to be salespeople on the show floor, but a layer deep, they are working for a particular brand or a particular company, and the incentive, because they're working on a quota system, the incentive is for them to, if Craig, you go in and you say, "Hey,
direct me to their brand of camera."
Of course, if you go in and say, "Hey, I need not the best camera." If I go in and I need the best camera for video, they're not gonna. A DSLR for video, they're not going to direct me to a GH4. They're going to direct the Sony guy is going to say, well, yeah, you need the A7 for sure. That shoots, all the while.
There's been some of that in all the brick and mortar stores, though, because the manufacturers are constantly giving them bonuses and all this if they push their particular product for this month. They have quotas as well, even though, they're supposed to be agnostic, camera agnostic in the brick and mortar store.
So where do you go? I mean, where do people that are listening to this, whether they're a new photographer or a seasoned professional, where do they go for, advice other than the internet? Is there a place other than the internet to go for just regular, non-biased advice on what to buy?
Well, I think any place where you can hang out with other photographers, right? Camera clubs, meetup groups, workshops, that sort of thing. Right. Anytime you go one of these, there's going to be a huge group of people talking about equipment. Now, some of them are a little religious about their brand, but you can at least get, what they like about it and what they don't like about it, and make your own informed decision.
Yeah. Well,
it's
that question, what camera should I buy, right? That's what we all get. Hey, someone comes to you and say, hey, Craig, what camera should I buy? But if they go to Best Buy and say, hey, person, what camera should I buy? They're not going to get necessarily the best answer.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, Martin, to cut you off. What were you going to say?
No. I was going to say on Craig's point now, you can also just you can handle the gear that the other participants of tours or the camera clubs have. I remember the very first Hokkaido landscape and wildlife workshop that I did in 2008. I came home and spent about $2,000 on gear that just because I'd seen.
Yeah.
You know, I was leading the workshop, but I'd been in a bit of a desert in some ways, being in Japan, because I'd not really been understood what people were using in the US or in other countries. And it was there that I learned about Really Right Stuff and, you know, all of these great manufacturers that I love working with now. So that's a great point that Craig just raised there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
bought several lenses because I borrowed them from somebody on a workshop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
say, oh, I have to have this now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing that I think might be eating into the profits of these brick and mortar camera stores, and that's rental. Right, so you know, instead of buying stuff, a lot of people just rent it. I know my friend, he's a filmmaker, Ron Dawson, up in the Seattle area. He shoots for clients all the time, but doesn't own a professional rig. Like he'll, depending on the budget of the client, that dictates what he's going to shoot it on, whether it's a Red or a GH4 or other. So
Right.
that's
For
another
commercial,
dynamic.
for
that's
commercial
shifting.
photographers, that works great, right? Hobbyists, it does get a little pricey, but yeah.
Yeah, it bites
well,
into your
as
honey
you know,
canai.
About a month ago, I rented an underwater housing because I wanted to do some underwater nudes in the pool, and for the cost of a rental, it was about a third what a cost of an underwater housing would cost.
Right.
You know,
Wow.
third to a fourth. So I
So
couldn't.
if you're going to do
a lot of
four of
shoots like-
those, it's a good idea to just buy it and suck it
yeah,
up.
which I did. Then the next day.
Yeah. There you go. And Craig, those underwater nudes you did, those weren't of yourself, were they?
No.
Okay,
Well, underwater selfies are coming, but yeah, that's not here yet.
Yeah, just warn us before. All right, guys, let's jump into the news. The first story that we're going to cover this week is last week Adobe did their annual Max conference, Adobe Max, where it's kind of like their Mac World or their CES or whatever, where they talk about the newest features in all of their apps. And you know, there were kind of mixed reactions with the update to the Creative Cloud apps. Some people say there were, you know, it was great to see them polishing things. Other folks say it was kind of lackluster. But they add a couple of interesting features, and I'm going to read this blurb here. So they announced a partnership with the news agency Reuters, the largest multimedia news provider. And so they're basically making all of their image content and video content available to view and use through Adobe Stock, including 60 million royalty-free photos, videos, and more, that's kind of a big deal, I think, for Adobe. That's a big deal. They've also added lots of little polishing touches to Photoshop and other Creative Cloud apps. Nothing big and revolutionary like we used to get back in the day. You remember layers showed up, and
Right.
you know, Photoshop got a video timeline, and then 3D was thrown in there. Nothing groundbreaking or revolutionary like that. And I want to get your both of your opinions on this. For me, as a Creative Cloud customer, I'm actually okay with that. I don't need revolutionary every single time they rev the app. I'd rather them give me a great app and then just keep polishing it behind the scenes, and maybe every couple of years give me something revolutionary as the creative world zeitgeist, you know, kind of dictates. But don't just give me stuff just to fuel make me feel good about my Creative Cloud subscription.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
What do you
Well,
think, Craig?
that's a lot of times they would just throw in features because they had to have something to release. And when they were on the actual physical product where they were releasing one every year, they had to do that.
Yeah.
With the Creative Cloud, what they have released a lot of new features over the past year.
Yeah, they trickle them out. It's like an
Yeah,
IV
they
drip of
trickle them
features.
out. And so there's been some really, content aware crop is really great. They've improved stitching for panoramas. There's been a lot of little features that they've added just along the way. And so when they have these big announcements, there's just nothing big to announce.
It's a double-edged sword because they set themselves up for this, right? So they do this big
conference,
grandiose conference event where people are like, well, if they're spending all this money to do this event, there must be something big coming. And then it's wah, 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 wah.
Right.
So they kind of set themselves up for that. And then the other thing is people consumers, myself included, we're trained right now to expect big things. All these companies, like even Apple, right? When Apple's under immense pressure to out innovate themselves every single release, and if they don't, Apple's going down the drain. Oh, this is the post-Steve era. They've lost their way, yada, yada, yada. If they don't, and even if they do make something good, there's trolls that come out of the woodwork that pick it apart and destroy everything all these engineers and people spent untold days and hours away from their families building for us, right? Martin, what do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, I think it's obviously there. If there's not meaty stuff on the table at these big meetings, it does make you wonder why they even have the event. But I totally agree with what you're both saying. That they are pushing out relatively meaty features, and they're coming on a steadier pace. And I feel I can totally understand the value of the Creative Cloud, and I'm happy to be a part of that. I've actually since moving, I switched my entire workflow from Lightroom to Capture One a few months ago.
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
since then, I thought, okay, so do I need the Creative Cloud anymore? And the answer is still yes. I mean, because Lightroom's only one part of it. I still use Photoshop quite a lot. I use Illustrator. I use InDesign. I use Premiere. I've now started. I record my podcasts in Audition now rather than GarageBand.
Oh,
so
cool.
I've put a few things in that only really works well with Audition, and I've changed the workflow. So I'm using a really big chunk of the Creative Cloud. So yeah, I don't necessarily need. I just want something reliable that gives me the features I want, and I don't really need the feature bloat that the a yearly or a 2-yearly big release sort of schedule brings. So I mean, it seems like a win-win thing. We get the new features as they're available, and we don't have to relearn the program when everything changes, and we don't necessarily have the bloat.
It's so interesting because they have built up this ecosystem around these releases, right? So there's this expectation from the user base that something big is going to come out. It's going to change my workflow and make my life so much easier. I won't know how I was able to live without it. And then there's the educational industry, which is gigantic, billion-dollar industry that's built around these releases as well. So it's not just you waiting on these, it's the lynda.coms and the Kelby Trainings and the Creative Lives and the Rocky Nook publishers. All these people want releases to come so they have something new to train you on. If there's nothing new to train you on, there's no reason for them to get more money out of you, right?
Right, but they are still doing the training on these little incremental releases, right? Right. There were a bunch of Lynda titles that came out in March when they released, and again in July when they released, and so it's just, so it's probably better for them. They don't have to just say, they get a pre-look at it and try to get things in the pipe, but they have a lot of things they got to cover. And this way, they kind of spread it out over the year. So
that's why it gets depressing. I have a whole bookshelf back there that have books in there that I regularly, at least once a quarter, go through and pull out books that are now irrelevant and donate them to the library. Sorry, library, but I donate them to the library. I started doing that. I mean, it was like several years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I was like, look at all these books I have laying around the house. I have books everywhere, and then I just spent like a week going through all these books and just make binarily going through the pile, saying relevant, irrelevant, relevant, irrelevant. I ended up with more irrelevant than I had relevant, and I literally had to fill up the car and go to the library and just, hey, here you guys go. All
do
these
I still
books.
need that Adobe 5 book? No.
Exactly. Yeah, the Photoshop Bible. You remember that?
Yeah.
Because these books get out, especially now, especially like you were saying before, Craig, as Adobe drip feeds these features out, it instantly kind of makes the book that you bought before the feature was released somewhat obsolete. Right? Or even as they polish new features, there's a different way to use this particular tool, but your book describes the old way. And but digital, getting online, you could probably find out what's going on a little bit easier.
So I do think they have a challenge because they do drip out these features, though, and don't have a big release for them, is that a lot of people are not aware that they exist.
Yeah.
right? They were out of town the week it was released, and they get back and they've missed all the talk about it. And I encounter that all the time. I'll show somebody, this is great new feature, and they go, "When did that happen?" I said, 3 months ago, right? They just didn't know. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we're in this cloud. All three of us, I think, are in this cloud of updating, and we're always on the latest and greatest and cutting edge, and have the latest thing, and all the time. And it's refreshing when I talk to my friends that aren't on that train. These are the folks that are like, yeah, I'm still on Photoshop 5.5. It works great for me. I don't need anything else. And I'm like, how can you possibly be on that? But they're still creating amazing work. They're perfectly happy. I'm like, how do I downshift away from the constant wave of updates?
You can't go back.
You can't. It's a ratchet, huh? It's a ratchet. Yeah. That's
Once you experience it, you can't go back. Now, they did have some other interesting things in this release. A lot of focus on mobile. Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, tell us about that. What did they do?
Well, so they released a lot of their apps for Android, which they had all been iOS apps prior to this. So that was kind of a big deal. And they're doing a lot with they have so many mobile apps. I have trouble keeping track of what is what, but Photoshop Fix and Mix, which are for doing like portraits and that sort of thing. And they're doing liquefying, healing, skin smoothing in the new app, right? Some pretty interesting stuff. I don't know that I would use it. Well, I rarely use the mobile apps. It's if I'm traveling and want to do, here's the shot I did today, and I'll just do a quick and dirty to post on Instagram. Most of my editing is going to be back on my, desktop. But they're really powerful tools they're adding to these mobile apps, and I'm sure that would appeal to some people in their workflow.
I wonder if one day I wonder when the day will come when we get to the full mobile workflow where a desktop is no longer needed. Martin, you think we'll get there at any point?
I think it's possible. I mean, technically, it's obviously possible, but I think I was reading a statement from Apple recently where people are saying, the new MacBook Pros have been announced, and part of the marketing blurb that I was reading about that, or one of I think it was maybe Mac Rumors, they were saying that someone in Apple has said, we've got no intention in the near future, like 5 to 10 years. To create one OS that works on both the laptops and on the like iPhone, iPad, things like that.
Yeah.
They're going to keep them separate through necessity and because they don't see the future in bringing them together. But I mean, technically, it's obviously possible. The iPads, my phone is more powerful than my first computer. My phone is more powerful than computers of 5-10 years ago.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was in the military. I was stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base here in California, on the coast. And I remember this was the time during the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. I don't know, the START Treaty. That was when we would invite Russian officials to come tour our military. Excuse me. I think that was the Russians hacking me. That was the time when we would invite the Russians to come in and tour our nuclear capabilities, and they would do the same. Kind of show me yours, I'll show you mine kind of thing. And I remember I was just an airman at the time, and I was tasked to follow them around and take pictures and document what was going on. And I remember the speech that the general would give, and he's like, the technology that we use to launch this ICBM is probably less capable, and you can tell how old this was, is less capable than what's present in a Palm Pilot. Remember those?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was like, a nuke, a multi or intercontinental ballistic missile with multi-warhead capability launched that could basically end life as we know it, controlled by something as powerful as a Palm Pilot. And you fast forward to today, we have, many times that in every device we have in our pockets, right?
Right. My watch has more power than the
You could wage global thermonuclear war with your Apple Watch, Craig.
Would you like to play a game?
No, I don't want to play that game at all. All right, guys, let's take a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about something that happened in Chicago involving baseball. All right, guys, we are back. Story number 2 is about the Chicago Sun-Times and Tribune covers after the World Series. So, Craig, do you know what the World Series is? Are you familiar with
yeah.
sports?
I watched it, actually.
You watched the whole thing, really?
I watched the last, the series between the Chicago and the team that lost.
Okay. Yeah, Chicago and that other team.
The Indians, yeah.
Yeah. So was this hockey or football? I don't know. Was it? So anyway, the story is, this comes to us from Petapixel. So the story is, if you didn't know, and if you are not a sports fan, the Chicago Cubs finally won the World Series after a 108-year drought. And I am from Chicago, so yeah, we had to have the story in this episode. But there was how do we tie this into photography? So
you had to search the internet far and wide.
Well, apparently some pictures were taken of this game. There you go. There's the tie-in. So let's see. I'm going to read this blurb. The Chicago Cubs finally won the World Series last night after a 108-year drought. But what some photojournalists talking over the cover photos. They're talking over the cover photos that were published by 2 of Chicago's biggest newspapers, the Tribune and the Sun-Times. Martin Bailey, did you look at this article over on Petapixel?
Yeah. I think we knew that something like this was going to be coming, and it's the quality of photos that are being used by newspapers that have basically trained their reporters to use an iPhone to make the photographs.
Yeah.
The quality of the 2 photos is just it's right there to see. Obviously, you're gonna link to this in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So if people haven't already looked, the Chicago Tribune shot, that's got an epic photograph of the players jumping up, and then the Sun-Times has got it looks like probably is something that one of the people in the audience just shot with their iPhone.
Totally.
And it's it's sad. It's a sign of the times, but it's also in many ways I'm happy this has happened, because it will hopefully make some of the companies that are thinking of cutting their photographers think more about it. I don't think that it will stop many of them, because photography is being commoditized. It's the value of photographs is going down every year, and I think that there's budgets are being cut worldwide, and it's going to continue to happen. On a totally selfish note, us photographers that actually make part of our income from selling photos, either as stock and prints, things like that. We're surrounded, the world is full of photographs every day. We look at billboards, the TV, newspapers, magazines. And if the quality of the photos that's being forced on us in these forms of media goes down, then it's going to help our photographs to stand out.
It increases the contrast, right?
Yeah. So, totally selfish way to think about it. But, it's like stock as well. A lot of the companies that are selling stock for pennies, the quality of their work is obviously going to be less than you'll get from a more expensive but a fully curated library of images from companies like Offset, the one that I work with. And so, I think that if you consider it that the quality of work of photographs being shown to people is going down will help us to stand out, that's maybe a good thing. But I think that obviously the bad thing is that there are photojournalists around the world that are losing their jobs because of this trend. It's a sign of the times. We're not going to change any of this. We're not going to stop Adobe selling their new Adobe Stock and giving essentially some of the photographers that are contributing 25 cents per photo, less than that in some cases. We're not going to stop it. Photography has been commoditized, but I think that this is a good story. It's a win for the photographer in many ways.
Yeah. I agree. And it's the whole contrast argument. And we covered the story, a couple of years ago or a year or so ago?
It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, when they started axing these photographers. And now and we keep seeing these things happen. It's turning over, it's eschewing the idea of professional journalism for crowdsourced journalism, which is it has its pluses and minuses. Crowdsourced or everyman journalism means you'll cover every corner of the planet because everyone is equipped with a camera these days, but not everyone is equipped with the artisanship required to create a good image. Craig, what do you think of this?
Well, they do have the reporters taking photos with iPhones instead of having the photographer go out with them. And for most stories, you would never even notice, or it may not make a big difference. But this was an iconic, this was a big deal. It should have been, right? And one photo, as he said, is iconic, and the other one, it looks, kind of like a snapshot from the audience. Now, it turns out that the one that the Sun-Times used that was just looks like a snapshot was done by a professional photographer. It was an AP photographer named David Phillip. And I went and looked at his body of work, and he takes epic photographs. So this was more just the newspaper. The editor doesn't know about photography, and they lost their photo editor as well. And so probably just picked one because it showed something he liked.
You would think, but what was going on in my mind as I read this was, okay, maybe what happened was there was sour grapes. If I was the editor and this was the World Series and I'm in Chicago and there's a chance that the Cubs may take it and it's a 108-year drought, I would be getting on the phone saying, okay, guys, I need some pro help here just in case, we take this thing. These are going to be some historic photographs. I wouldn't just trust it to somebody that didn't have any talent. And then the response I would probably get from those guys that had been cut loose would be like, go pound sand.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Go figure it out yourself. I'm not going to help you now when I'm trying to feed my kids and you let me go.
Right.
So
the economics of it are that, right, they are hurting. My local newspaper here on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is, it feels like it's only 3 pages, long. They don't have any advertising anymore. It used to be, right, big, thick newspaper, and they're really struggling. And, internet has kind of, killed a lot of the actual newspaper jobs, right?
Yeah,
which we talked about years ago is why they laid these people off in the first place. I don't know how they solved that, right?
I started my career in Silicon Valley after leaving the military at the San Jose Mercury News. That was my job, and one of my favorite things to do at the San Jose Mercury News was to go back into the press room and see those giant press machines feeding newspaper through them. It's like giant transformer robots that are creating newspapers. It was like the most fascinating thing in the world, and it's sad to think that world, back then even there was the sign on the wall, because I think the big threat to newspapers back then, probably still today, was Craigslist, because newspapers made all their money from classified ads when you could just go on Craigslist and sell your stuff quicker for nothing, know? So they just took the wind out of their sails. That was the big threat. And now it's everything else. It's us, right? It's podcasts, it's blogs, it's Craigslist, it's Amazon. Everyone is taking the wind out of there. And now newspapers have kind of become, kids today some kids may have never even picked up a newspaper, in their lives, which is kind of strange. But as someone said I was watching the news, getting depressed yesterday, but they were saying something. Someone was saying something about they were having the discussion about. Actually, I think it was President Obama was talking. He had done this interview with. What's the comedian from Bill Maher? So he did an interview with Bill Maher, and they were talking about the president was talking about how the problem with information dissemination these days is the internet, and there's so many different news sources. There's nothing for people to kind of put their brain on to say, yeah, this is the right thing and this is objective journalism right here. You kind of get what the news outlet wants to tell you, and then if they say it with loudly enough and repeatedly enough, you will believe it. And he actually went on to say that newspapers are probably the only way, or one of the few ways, that people can get real objective journalism these days. So I don't know. It's scary. and they're going away. So then what does the world look like in 2020? I don't know. After 4 years of this next president, right? So we don't know. We don't know. I don't know. Martin, how do you consume your news over there in Japan? Is it all online, or do you schlep down and go get a newspaper and read it?
We used to get a newspaper, but I rarely read it. My wife used to read it, and I'd pick it up every few weeks maybe. But I've always been that way. I've never been a big newspaper reader. Since the internet came along, of course, I pick up stuff and I'll get snippets of news here and there. But probably, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is just I watch the news on the TV at least once a day. The problem with that, of course, is that the TV stations now, all of the news programs here are scared because Abe, the premier or prime minister or whatever of Japan, is bringing in these stupid laws that stop journalists from basically having freedom of speech. And they're making things a little bit scary over here for the journalists, but still generally we've got good quality news, and I just watch the news on the TV. So I've never really been one of the people that was contributing to keeping newspaper companies in business anyway.
Yeah, but see, that's the other thing, Martin. You hit an interesting point there. You get your news, some of your news from the TV, and one of the trends here in the U.S. is cord cutting. Right, so people don't have that. I mean, I get YouTube, I get Hulu, Netflix, I get apps for Showtime, HBO, all that stuff. So I don't. I have CNN on Apple TV, but it's not like I'm going in there and I'm watching it regularly, right? So that routine that we used to have, where in the United States at least, it was watch dinner, sit down, watch the news. Now you're up to date, go to bed, get up the next morning, discuss what happened on the news around the coffee, around the water cooler, and then, rinse and repeat. That cycle is gone. So what do we do, especially if newspapers go away? What's next?
One thing that I do is I use a program, I think it's called Leaf. It's basically, they're kind of going out of fashion a little bit now. But it's an really simple syndication.
RSS.
RSS.
Yep.
So I've got a bunch of RSS feeds from various news sources. A lot of them are photography based. So if David Duchemin releases a new blog post, I get a little thing in Leaf. And I've got a whole bunch of photography related stuff, but I've got a few news feeds in there as well. So if something's announced that is important, then that'll often pop up in there. And I think that's probably, as far as just the written news is concerned, like in text, that's probably one of the main ways that I consume that. The problem is that I probably open Leaf, I don't know, once every few weeks.
Right.
I just don't have the time. I'm kind of confident that if something big is happening, I'll hear about it somewhere. And I suppose I'm pretty passive as far as getting the news concerned. I'm not, apart from the news that I watch on the TV in the evenings, everything else, I just sit here and wait for it to fall into my ears or eyes. And generally it does. I can't really think of how, but I mean, even TWiP, just coming on here once a month or once every 3 months, I learn things that are happening. And when I listen, that you learn things, podcasts, especially things like this, and Sharky James's Petapixel. I mean, the Petapixel site is great for bringing news stories in the photography world, and Sharky does a great job of putting that out to the world. So subscribe to a few podcasts and you get most of the main stuff that's happening. Yeah. And I think that's probably what I'm doing.
Yeah. But again, you have to be, maybe we need some sort of podcast curation or some sort of curation, just because, like the president was saying in that interview with Bill Maher, he said something about if people watched only Fox News, they would never have elected him. Right. So, which is to say, and not to rail against Fox News. Yeah, not to rail against Fox News, but there's both sides of that, right? So Fox News may represent the right, and then CNN is the left, or there's nothing that's kind of like objective that you can trust.
Right.
You know,
well,
that's
we
right in the
used to
middle.
think we could trust, right, that it was unbiased, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it wasn't so overt as it is now, right? They're obviously biased now, and it's hard to find one that isn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's upsetting. I get upset, and I want to move on to this next story after this, but I get upset and like violently projectile ill. I watch these CNN segments where they try to be fair and balanced or whatever, and they bring on, they're talking politics, and they'll bring on, one or two people from the Trump campaign and one or two people from the Clinton campaign, and these are paid surrogates that are paid to argue regardless of how ridiculous the argument is,
Right.
like
they make their money to argue.
yeah,
right?
to argue. Like if the
support
candidate
of-
that they're representing said, the Earth revolves around the moon, they would defend it to the end of time.
because that's how they're paid. Yeah.
Because they're paid for that. But then there's a constituency of people that will believe that and follow it. And I just have to turn it off. I have to walk away. Martin, you're lucky, man. You're lucky that you are not in this salad of craziness we have going on here in the U.S.
Yeah. Oh, we have our share of craziness here in Japan, but
Yeah, you do.
I don't envy you guys. It's but of course, I mean, a lot of the news at the moment is all about what's happening over in the US. So we're seeing it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they don't call us a superpower for nothing, man. I'm telling you. All right, guys, let's move on to story number 3. So if you've done anything, either of you have done anything on the internet in the, over the past, what was it, last week before last, you probably hit the slowdown, right? So there was what was it, last Friday? I think it was last Friday. 2 Fridays ago, yeah. So sites like Netflix, Twitter, Spotify, Wired, Hulu, all these guys basically either slowed down or went completely offline because there was this massive DNS attack. They called it a botnet attack. And essentially what happened was some hackers, we don't know who they are, or maybe some people know who they are, but we don't know who they are, took over allegedly several webcams, kind of like the ones that we are doing this show on right now, to use them to direct a gazillion requests to these sites, thereby bringing them down to their knees. That's what a denial of service attack is. It's like a fire hose, like trying to drink from a fire hose. Your mouth can only take so much, and then you kind of die or shut down, right? So that's what they did. They turned everybody into a fire hose at these sites and brought them to their knees. So the story is, people were saying that, this is, the hackers took control of baby monitors and webcams and security cameras and all this stuff, when actually what happened was something slightly different. Craig, did you read the story?
I did, yeah. So
tell us what happened.
It was it was security cameras, not cameras that consumers use, but the ones that businesses would tend to use. And it was the older models. A lot of them had either a modem connection to the internet, right? So
a modem,
2004. Well, so these security things, you don't need a lot of throughput for them. And they just work, right? You just plug it in, and right. I had one in my business for 11 years that I got at the beginning, and never upgraded it because it just took security camera footage, right?
Yeah.
But the security, someone found a vulnerability in the software and was able to download software into them that could cause this botnet attack.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, Martin. What do you think about this? Were you affected at all by this attack?
I think I noticed a few sites that I regularly visit that were slow, but it wasn't something that really affected us over here. I think I was sent an email by a few of the services that I use saying that that we've been affected, but it's all okay now. But yeah, I mean, I think the fun thing about this, not the fun thing, kind of a ironically fun thing about this is that. The article that you've linked to goes on to talk about things like light bulbs being Everything's connected now. And
You're right.
they mention a toothbrush that's connected. My electric toothbrush has Bluetooth and records how many minutes I record. I brush my teeth each day. It says, "Okay, you brush your teeth. You haven't brushed your teeth yet." And I'll shut up. So,
Really? Oh,
yeah. Honestly, I've got Bluetooth in my toothbrush, so it knows. How, it's David Duchemin. When we were on a couple of years ago, we were on my Hokkaido landscape tour together, and he sat behind me and he said, "Show me some of your photos on your phone." So I've got opened the phone up, gave him Lightroom Mobile, and then when he closed it, he started looking at the other apps on my phone, and he says, "What's this? You've got a brawn, the toothbrush."
Yeah.
And he said, "What's this?" And he opened it up, and it said Martin's pushing too hard, and he's like he's rolling around, and it's basically if you apply too much pressure when you brush your teeth, it warns you. So, but the point was.
Oh, Martin, that's taking it too far, man. I'm sorry.
I heard someone talking about a toilet paper roll dispenser that would notify Amazon when it ran low.
And so these things, I mean, a lot of the time it's just gimmicks to get us to buy stuff. It worked for me. I mean, I'd got the one toothbrush that was like, I don't know, $200 for a really nice electric toothbrush. The one with Bluetooth was almost $300. They got an extra $100 out of me for Bluetooth. And that's what's happening. People are they're connecting stuff.
The Internet of Things, they call it, right? The Internet of Things. Yeah.
So at the very end of this article, the fun thing was a quote by I think it's Wickholm. It says people shouldn't be afraid of their light bulb, says Wickholm, yet. But
Yeah.
you should be aware that if it has an internet connection, that light bulb could be turned against you.
Skynet. Skynet is coming, man.
I mean, everything is online. Everything's connected in this Internet of Things. And so you do have to be, I think you have to ask yourself, do you really need everything online? I think you mentioned last month when I was on TWiP, Frederick, about was it a door camera?
The Ring.
By default, it's streaming constantly. Mm-hmm. We don't need that, and the more manufacturers that try to use that sort of thing, and without really thinking of the consequences, just hook everything up onto the internet. We should be more intelligent, or not we, but the manufacturers of these products should be more intelligent in, if you're going to connect something up, how do you connect it, and how much data do you really need to send across the internet?
Yeah, I don't know. I would like a smart toilet that would analyze my deposit and tell me how to adjust my diet.
I was about to say, don't go there. Don't go there.
Say, Frederick, you need more fiber.
Yeah, nice.
It's coming. I'm telling you.
These startups, I started my career working in these startups in the Silicon Valley here, and typically the person that was in charge of security, was the junior or new engineer. It was not one of the, right. It was kind of an afterthought. Oh yeah, we should probably look at security. We'll put Bob on it. He just started, and a lot of companies, especially these startups where you don't have a lot of people, and everybody's wearing multiple hats. He just goes and finds something online that some service and says, all right, this is how we're going to do our security without knowing the ramifications of it. So I think it's just going to continue to be an issue. Right.
Yeah. I don't think you can stop it, right? And there's multiple tangents happening, right? So there's all these discussions about AI and how at a certain point it's going to become sentient and realize that humans are an infestation and the problem, and tell us that, hey, the planet is more important than these things living on it, and try to get rid of us so we won't harm the planet. And, there's all kinds of things happening that are scary. But it's all good. But you think about this stuff. I was thinking about it when they said that these seemingly innocuous devices were commandeered to do something nefarious. I was thinking, we're heading down this path of self-driving vehicles. And trucking and all that. What happens when that network is breached? and hackers decide, I want to cause gridlock in Los Angeles. Well, that's already Los Angeles, but I'm going to cause gridlock in some other city or do something. You know,
Right, just crash all the cars. Yeah,
crash all the cars. You know,
Yeah.
or do something. You know, whatever. It's
Well, even now they say that there are ways. Some of the cars that are online to get updates and things, there are ways to take over them and like disable the brake system and things like that.
I saw that movie.
I saw a news report on that just a couple of weeks ago, where a guy sitting, they get a hacker sitting in the car, and he's saying, "All right, I'm going to make the car go reverse. I'm going to make the car stop now." Right.
Yeah. So these things are already possible because we're sticking everything online, and we need to get better at the security. And one thing that we should probably say, just for the listeners, in that if they don't go and check out the full article, that at the moment this article's saying that we're not too concerned about devices on a network at home, because a lot of the time only your router has actually got an IP address that's publicly visible. It's really not that easy to get devices that are inside your home to get to them from outside, from the router. So it's not something that you need to worry about immediately, thinking that everything's going to go crazy. But I think we all need to be a little bit concerned about
cautiously optimistic.
The possibility of. It's like that thing they were talking about in the article as well, where some people from halfway around the world were talking to kids on the baby cam thing. This is, you have to be careful about what you put on the internet.
Martin, do you feel like that you could cut the cord? Do you feel like you could say take your family and move to a log cabin in the woods and fish in the creek for your dinner and raise crops and light a fire at night and read? You ever feel like that you could do that?
I could do that for about, I don't know, a week. But I mean, like many people, my entire business depends on being online. I create content. That's part of one of my main marketing vehicles. If I can't get to the internet, then basically my business collapses, and I don't get to do the Tim Ferriss 5-hour week or anything. It's just I have to be online. I find it relaxing sometimes when when I was in Greenland recently. It was one of those systems where you have to pay like $45 for an hour of internet, and you have to log off when you're finished. So I actually found it quite refreshing to not be connected the whole time.
It might be a resort. That'd be like a nice resort, right?
Yeah.
The detox, the tech geek detox resort.
Right. It's the same for Namibia. I mean, I'll be in Namibia again in June next year. And one of the things that I say in the guidebook is we don't have internet. There are some places where the internet is either so slow or non-existent that you're going to be offline for a couple of days. Let's enjoy it. It actually does feel good to not have access to Instagram or things like this. Just in blocks of time. But
it takes about a day of withdrawals, because you're going through withdrawal symptoms, and then it's like, oh, this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, these Utah trips that I go on are the same way. The longest I've had no internet access is a week on Lake Powell, a houseboat on Lake Powell. And after a few days, the first few days I'm going, I need to check my email. I need to, right. But after a while, it was refreshing. It was nice. And I could then just concentrate on my photography and just, right.
Yeah.
I think what helps is you come out the other side and the world hasn't ended and you're not in financial ruin, even though you weren't in contact and responding within 30 milliseconds to every email that came into you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
It does feel weird coming back and getting that internet, though. I do feel like I missed a chunk of life that happened while I was gone. And sometimes there are people that are mad at me because they couldn't get in touch with me. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
I have to deal with them. So.
But Craig, do you think you could live like I posited to Martin there? You think you could live by the creek in a log cabin and hang out and fish and eat fresh salmon and bake your own bread?
Well, I could certainly do it, but I wouldn't enjoy it.
Well, we may be heading in that direction, my friend. All right, guys, let's take another quick break. When we come back, the guys will share their picks of the week. All right, guys, we're back. Let's dive into our picks of the week segment. This is where you can recommend anything you would like under the stars to the TWiP Army, as long as it is related to somehow related to photography. Martin, I'm going to let you go first, man. What's your pick of the week?
I'm going to pick. I don't know if I've got a bit of a backlog. I don't know if anyone else has mentioned this recently, but I'm gonna pick the DJI Osmo Mobile. I remember a couple of years ago when the Osmo came out, and Frederick, you told me about it, and you were doing this on the screen, and you was like, "Okay, look at that." So I ran out and bought an Osmo straight away after that.
Yeah.
But I've got to admit, because it was a really wide fixed lens, and I enjoyed the fact that it was 4K, but I found that I wasn't using it as much as I wanted to, because it was a wide fixed lens and I'd really not got control over it. And then DJI brought out some longer focal length cameras that you could fit onto it, and I was thinking, I'm not going to bother, because the more of this stuff I add, it's more things to carry around.
Yeah.
And then I was talking with Doug Kay a couple of weeks ago. We spoke for my podcast about his Cuba trips, and he mentioned the DJI Mobile. And I thought, you know what? My phone now has 4K. It's got great 4K video in there. It does slow motion in 1080p. So I thought, I'm going to get one of those. So I did the same thing. I actually, just like I did with the DJI Osmo, that I bought it straight the day after. This one, I think I ordered it within 10 minutes of hanging up the call with Doug. But they're great. I've always got my phone with me.
Is the phone that you have on there? That's an iPhone, right?
That's an iPhone with my snazzy bamboo.
Is it a 6S Plus or the smaller one?
It's the 7 Plus.
Oh, the 7 Plus. So the big one. I heard it had trouble with the big phones. It works okay?
It works fine. It's the problem is that you have to be, if you put a case on it, it's really difficult to balance it properly. And I actually had to send the first one of these back. It had got it, but it would turn out to be a problem with the Osmo Mobile itself. It was like I was holding a small cement mixer. It kept shuddering really badly. But it turned out there was a problem with it. The store sent me another one, and it's been great. I mean, I don't have to. If I turn this off, you see how it flops over to the side. That's because it's not totally balanced.
Yeah.
But it calibrates fine, and I'm able to, once I turn the power on, it can handle it, and it's working really well. So I've been doing all sorts of things with this, and I was out with a friend photographing the Rainbow Bridge here in Tokyo last week, and I just was getting some video of that, and it's just really steady, and it's right there on my phone.
So what happened to your old Osmo?
It's sitting in my little thing beside me.
It's in your tech graveyard, isn't it?
When I finally get an employee, I'm going to just task them. The first thing they're going to do is put everything on the Yahoo auctions here. We don't really have eBay, but they have an auction system that Yahoo's still doing pretty well over here in Japan.
I was going to say, I didn't even know Yahoo auctions was still in existence.
Right.
Wow.
So they're actually, it's the main one here in Japan. So one of the first things that my employee is going to do when I finally make the time to employ someone is to sit down and sell all of the junk that I've got that that I'm no longer using.
I need an intern to do that for sure. Yeah.
Oh,
that's a startup business model right there, I think.
Right.
Cool.
I actually had two things. If you can let me just do one other quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
I've just released a review of, after about 10 years of this being a little bit too soft on the higher resolution cameras, Canon has just released the new 24-105 f4 IS lens.
Oh.
And I just did a review of this on my blog yesterday. This is really nice. The sharpness is totally there. It's a little bit better than my 24 to 70, which was a very sharp lens anyway. And I've been really happy with it. I went out and did took some example shots last week. On Friday, it was released. I got it on Thursday. It's released here. It's actually not released in the US until a month from now, because Canon's had some production issues. Mm-hmm. It's running behind a little bit. So although it's now available in Japan, it's going to take you guys another month until you can get it. But it's it's all working. It really is a nice lens.
This web page that I'm showing is on your blog, so you did a nice little write up about it, right? And you talked about it in podcast episode 548, right?
That's the one, yeah. So I mean, people can get to that with the link mbp.ac/548, and just check that out. But it's a great lens. And the thing is for me is it fills a gap. I've been working now with my 11 to 24, 24 to 70, and then the 100 to 400 for a lot of my work. But there's a 30 millimeter gap, and a lot of the places that I've shooting, zooming with your feet will get you killed. So I really have missed that 30 millimeters. Now I've got it. So I'm going from 11 to 400 millimeters in 1 millimeter increments, which is great.
Where did you buy that lens from, Martin? Yodobashi?
I got this from Map Camera. I buy all of my cameras and lenses from Map Camera, just down the road from Yodobashi.
Okay, Map Camera. Okay.
Yeah. They're a great store here in Tokyo. And I literally, here's the good thing, and if I know that there's probably less than 1% of your audience listening from Tokyo or Japan, but the good thing about this store is that they buy your secondhand gear really expensive. So I sold one lens and one body, and I got double the amount needed to buy the new lens. So I always go back there and just they give you a little ticket to show that you bought it from them, mm-hmm. and then you get an extra 3%, and it's just really good prices. So I'm a huge fan of Map Camera.
Give us a link, and we'll link to them in the show notes for that 1%.
Sure. Yeah, sure, we'll do.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that pick of the week, Martin. That was good.
I just recently retired my 24 to 105 because I wasn't using it all that much, because as you said, it is a little soft. Mm-hmm. So I think you just cost me some money.
There you go. That's the power of TWiP. It's costing everybody money. Thank you. All right, Craig, what's your pick of the week, man?
Well, I have an inexpensive pick. So this is a book by Zach Arias, it came out a few years ago, but I pick it up and reread it on a regular basis. It's called Photography Q&A: Real Questions, Real Answers, and it's just an excellent book. He is he is so forthcoming with information. He talks about his struggles and the exact same struggles I have and how he dealt with them. It's just something I keep every time I go back to it. I discover something new. So it's nice. a great book.
Do you have it? Do you have the physical version, or are you rocking the ebook?
I have the physical version. Yes.
Very cool.
I read that on Kindle.
You have it on Kindle? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember reading this on a plane on the way to some wonderful location, and I totally agree with Craig. It's a great book.
All right, I'm buying it tonight. Very good. All right. Good. There's my lights. All right, it'll fix itself in a second. There's something weird.
Somebody hacked the internet and turned on your lights.
I think because we said something about hackers. See, now they gave it back to me. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, guys. My pick of the week is something that I've been looking forward to for a while, and it's so I have a Theta 360 camera, the Ricoh Theta S. And which you have as well, right, Craig?
I do. Yep.
Yeah, I love that camera. And the problem with the Theta is it only shoots in 1080, which that one. Yeah, hold it up. Yeah, that one. I have that one. Yeah. And it's great, but it only shoots in 1080, which seems like only, but when you think of it, it's 1080 it's a sphere that you only see a portion of that sphere at any given time, which is at best maybe 360. So you end up with kind of a soft, mushy video. It does great for stills, but for video, it's not the best quality. So I was looking forward to Nikon releasing the Key Mission 360, which ups the video resolution to 4K, amongst other things. So I picked one up yesterday. I was speaking at a trade show in Seattle yesterday, and I picked this one up yesterday thinking, hey, I'm going to play with that thing. So when I got home, got it set up and everything, and last night I was exhausted from traveling, so I figured my brain wasn't firing on all cylinders. I couldn't get it set up right. It wouldn't pair to my phone. So I'm doing something stupid. So I went to bed, got up this morning, tried again, and still couldn't get it to go. Yeah, so I get online like anybody else would. I Google and YouTube, and apparently I'm not the only one that's having issues with pairing this thing to an iOS device. So as a result, although I wanted to make this my pick of the week today, it has to be my anti-pick of the week right now. So until Nikon fixes the software on this, I have to steer you away from getting the Key Mission 360 until they fix that pairing issue, because it's like really, really frustrating to have a beautiful piece of kit that you can't use at all for anything. Even their manual, just exactly going through the steps in the manual won't pair. And then getting online, and some guy figured it out. He's like, oh, you got to make sure you hit this button first and then stand on one leg and then recite the national anthem backwards. Then it might pair if the sun is equinox or something, right? So I did all that stuff and still failed. It still failed. So
and you can't use it without pairing it.
You can't use it without pairing it. There's no interface on this thing, right? So you can't set it up. You can't do anything with it without pairing it to some other device with a screen. So as a result, it's my unpick of the week, and it is going back to the retailer whom I will not mention that I bought it from for a full refund. Unfortunately, my other pick is kind of photography related, but not really. So if you
only half the stories have been photography related.
I know. This is becoming this something in photography. This week in the world. But I saw a movie while I was in Seattle, actually, and it's called Doctor Strange. Have you guys seen this movie yet?
I have not. I want to. It's on my list to see.
Okay, this movie is ridiculously good. So you have to go see Doctor Strange. I think I liked it specifically because I was in Seattle giving a talk on time travel. The name of the talk was time travel, right? So it was, it sounds contrived, Martin, but it was all about, using the speed of light and how we can manipulate it as photographers to do cool things, right? So then that night I go see Doctor Strange, and lo and behold, I'm not going to give away the plot of the movie, but the guy's manipulating time. He's doing all kinds of cool stuff. The effects are ridiculous. Benedict Cumberbatch is the main actor in it, is good, and I think in everything I've seen him in so far, he's been exceedingly good. And in this, he's like the perfect Doctor Strange. It's a good story, good effects. It's a good movie. It's one. Put it this way, I've only seen I think 2 movies repeatedly in the theater. I felt like going back to the theater to see them again. One of them was The Matrix, one only. Mm-hmm. The other one, the only Matrix. The other one was Jurassic Park, one. Mm-hmm. So I saw those 2 movies in the theater because I felt like they were like kind of like, oh my goodness, what's going on? This one is kind of in that ilk of like, okay, this is something new that we haven't seen in the theater before. So that's my movie recommendation, Doctor Strange.
Well, that's the second recommendation I've heard today. So
you're gonna go see it. Go see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it has 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, which is really high.
Yeah, it's good. So I give Doctor Strange 2 thumbs up. I give the Key Mission 360 1 thumbs down until they fix the software. If they fix the software and I'm able to actually, maybe use it, then maybe make some images with the Key Mission. It is now the unlocked or the locked Mission 360. All right, guys, we're at the end of the show. We kind of talked about what you guys were working on at the beginning of the show, but anything else you want to share with us before we sign off? Martin Bailey, you go first.
Yeah, I I mentioned this last month. I think I've still got a couple of places on my Hokkaido winter landscape tour in January. And I've got one space, due to cancellation, I've got one space on my Namibia tour in June. That's an epic trip. They both are. So if anyone's interested in that, go over to mbp.ac/workshops. Or just
Craig's raising his hand. I think he just sold one.
Yeah, I would love to
Just go to my website and look at there's a tours and workshops links at the top of the page there, and they're all linked from there. But yeah, they're great trips, and I'd love to travel with a member of the TWiP audience.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, we'll link to, as usual, we'll link to that in the show notes.
Thank you.
All right, Craig Colvin, man, what's up? What's up with you?
So I just want to say the Utah adventure trip that I'm doing, they just opened those up for registration, and you get $300 off if you register before December 1st. I'm doing the June 1st through 6th tour on that. So these are great trips. It's 6 photographers and 3 models, and we do 5 days of photography all over Utah. So it's great trip. Yeah.
I want to go.
So yeah, the registrations just started last week, and I think they're already half full. So for all their trips. So I went in May last year, liked it so much I went in September, and now I'm going to start going teaching. So if you like fine art nudes and the landscape, there is no better trip out there.
Love it. Love it. Cool. Well, congratulations, man, on doing that. And let me know if you don't fill it up. I may take that last slot from you.
All right.
I need an end of year kind of respite from the insanity that is my life.
It's getting tough. There are so many workshops to go that I want to go on that I'm having to pick and choose.
I think workshops are important. I think they're becoming increasingly important. We talked a while back about how many there were and the kind of this influx, but I think workshops personally serve a really important kind of role in the photographer's life, because we all tend to have, even the most modest gear is really good these days. But if you don't put yourself in a situation to use that gear, you end up disappointed and jaded, and why did I spend all my money on that camera and all I have pictures of my feet after I unboxed it, so doing these attending these workshops, I think, is important, because it forces you out of your comfort zone and into a situation with other people that are like-minded, plus you have adult supervision, with a photographer that knows the location that you're at and all that. And then you end up with great images, and you come back jazzed with, new friends and new images and a new understanding of how to use your gear, and you just want to go on another one, right?
Yeah, it's always inspirational, and it's a period of time, 3 days to a week or whatever, of just marinating in photography. That's right. You just getting up and shooting, hanging around people talking about photography, go shoot again. It's great. You just can't do that in your day-to-day life, or I can't. Maybe some people can, but
no, you can't. So. Cool. Well, I recommend both of your workshops. I think people should definitely check them out. I think they would both be life-changing in their own unique ways. Yep. All right, we are at the end of another episode of TWiP. Remember, TWiP Army, you can help us grow TWiP and expand it by becoming a patron. Every donation helps. Just head over to twip.pro/donate to get access to our patron-only TWiP resources, and of course, my undying gratitude. That's twip.pro/donate. And also, you can check out thisweekinphoto.com to subscribe to this show and all of our other podcasts about all things photography. And now it is time to take that lens cap off.